His rival marked her as his weakness before they even met. But that night in Vegas, Rowan Ellis had no idea she was already being watched. No idea that pulling the wrong man into a bachelorette party would seal her fate. What Rowan didn't know was that the man she was about to touch had killed for less. Rowan scrambled off his lap so fast she nearly tripped over her own heels. Her face burned hot enough to set off the sprinkler system. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I thought we were expecting. There was supposed to be." Silas Sterling stood slowly, buttoning his shirt with precise, unhurried movements. His expression hadn't changed. Calm, unreadable. But his eyes stayed locked on her face like she was the only person in the room. The party noise had died completely. 25 women stood frozen, phones still raised, mouths hanging open. "Mr. P. Sterling," Reed repeated from the doorway, his voice tight. "The casino situation requires immediate attention." Silas didn't look at him. He looked at Rowan. "Your name." It wasn't a question. It was a command delivered in a voice that expected obedience. "Rowan," she stammered. "Rowan Ellis. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't know who you were. We hired someone and he was late, and I just assumed." "You assumed?" He finished buttoning his shirt, his fingers moving with the same controlled precision he seemed to apply to everything. Interesting. What she couldn't see in his eyes was recognition. He'd seen her face before, in a file marked surveillance target. Then he turned and walked out. Reed followed, but not before shooting Rowan a look that clearly said she'd just made a catastrophic mistake. The door closed. The suite remained silent for exactly 3 seconds before chaos erupted. Peyton grabbed Rowan's arm. "Oh my God, did you just molest Silas Sterling?" Someone else shrieked with laughter. Another friend pulled up a gossip site on her phone, showing a blurry photo of Silas at some charity gala with a caption speculating about his business dealings. Rowan couldn't hear any of it. She was still seeing those gray eyes, fixed on her like she'd committed an unforgivable transgression. Or worse, like she'd become something he needed to understand. While Rowan laughed nervously with her friends, Silas was already making a decision that would change both their lives forever. In the elevator, Reed kept his mouth shut until they reached the private executive floor. The doors opened to a sleek, minimalist hallway that smelled like expensive leather and control. Silas walked straight to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the strip, his silhouette dark against the neon chaos below. "Find everything," Silas said quietly. Reed pulled out his phone. "Sir?" "Rowan Ellis. I want to know where she's from, where she works, who she knows, why she's in my hotel, and why she touched me like I was nothing." His voice stayed calm, but there was something underneath it. Something sharp and dangerous. "Everything, Reed. By morning." Reed nodded and disappeared. Silas stood at the window for a long time, replaying the moment. Her hand on his chest, her laugh. The way she'd climbed onto his lap without hesitation, without fear, like he was just another man hired to entertain her friends. No one had touched him like that in years. No one would dare. It should have made him angry. Instead, it made him curious. But curiosity in Silas Sterling's world was dangerous. And what Reed would discover by morning would prove that Rowan's life had been in danger long before she ever walked into that suite. If this moment hit you the way it hit me while writing it, take a second to subscribe. It tells me you want more stories like this, and it truly helps me keep making them. Comment where you're watching from. I love seeing where this story reaches. And here's what gets me about Silas. He's the villain everyone fears, but he's not the real threat in this story. The real villain is a system where people become surveillance targets before they even know they've done something wrong. Where your father's mistakes become your burden. Where being marked as someone's weakness means your life is forfeit. That's the toxic cycle Silas was born into, and the one he's about to drag Rowan into, whether she's ready or not. By 6 a.m., Reed knocked on the door to Silas's private suite. He entered carrying a tablet and an expression that said the news wasn't simple. Rowan Marie Ellis, Reed began, swiping through files. 27. Marketing assistant at a mid-tier agency in Los Angeles. Clean record. No debts. No criminal history. Social media is boring. Mostly food photos and pictures of her friends. She's here for a bachelorette party. The bride is Peyton Marks, a college friend. They're flying home tomorrow afternoon. Silas sat in the leather chair by his desk, perfectly still. That's it? The answer to that question was about to shatter everything Silas thought he knew about random encounters. Reed hesitated. No, sir. I ran her name through our monitoring systems. Standard protocol for anyone who gets close to you. He turned the tablet around, showing Silas a screenshot. This was pulled from encrypted communications we intercepted last month. It's from Kai Maddox's personal device. The image showed a photograph of Rowan, clearly taken without her knowledge. She was walking out of a coffee shop, laughing at something on her phone. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. A good weakness. Silas's jaw tightened. When was this taken? 3 weeks ago, in Los Angeles. We didn't flag it because we didn't know who she was. Reed's voice stayed professional, but there was an edge to it. Maddox has had her under surveillance. We don't know why yet. But the truth behind that surveillance was darker than anyone realized. And it went back 10 years, to a debt Rowan never knew existed. Silas stood, taking the tablet. He stared at the photo, at Rowan's unguarded smile, and felt something cold settle in his chest. Kai Maddox didn't surveil random people. If he'd labeled her a weakness, it meant he'd already decided how to use her. And last night she'd walked directly into Silas's orbit, making herself visible, making herself a target. The coincidence was too perfect, the timing too precise. Either Maddox had orchestrated the entire bachelorette party encounter, which seemed impossible, or fate had just handed Maddox exactly what he needed. Bring her to me, Silas said. This morning. Private office. Non-negotiable. Rowan Ellis was about to discover that her worst hangover was nothing compared to the nightmare she was waking up to. Rowan woke up to the worst hangover of her life and 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. Her head pounded. Her mouth tasted like regret and cheap champagne. Peyton was still asleep on the other bed, snoring softly with a sleep mask over her eyes. Rowan's phone buzzed again. She answered without thinking. Hello? Ms. Ellis, this is Reed Olson, head of security for Sterling Hospitality. Mr. Sterling requests your presence in his office at 10 a.m. A car will be waiting for you in the lobby. Her stomach dropped. Wait, what? Why? Mr. Sterling will explain. 10 a.m., Ms. Ellis, don't be late. He hung up. Rowan stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about packing her bag and heading straight to the airport, but something in Reed's voice told her that running wasn't an option. What Rowan didn't realize was that running would have made everything worse. Kai Maddox's people were already positioned at the airport, waiting. At exactly 10 a.m., Rowan stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor. Reed was waiting. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just gestured for her to follow. The hallway felt longer than it should. Everything was sharp angles and cold glass. They stopped in front of a set of black double doors. Reed knocked once, then opened them. Silas's office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire strip. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, and intimidating. Silas stood behind his desk, hands in his pockets, watching her enter. Sit, he said. Rowan sat, her hands twisted in her lap. Mr. Sterling, I really am sorry about last night. I know it was inappropriate. I know where you work, Silas interrupted, his voice calm. I know you graduated from UCLA with a degree in communications. I know you've lived in the same apartment in Silver Lake for 3 years. I know you're here for Peyton Marks's bachelorette party, and you're flying home tomorrow at 2 p.m. Rowan's blood went cold. How do you? But what came next would be even more terrifying than his surveillance of her. I know everything about you, Ms. Ellis, because that's what I do when someone gets close to me without permission. He walked around the desk, stopping a few feet away. What you don't know is that you've been under surveillance for 3 weeks by a man named Kai Maddox. He pulled out his phone and showed her the screenshot. Her own face stared back at her. Her own smile. The words beneath it made her feel sick. A good weakness, she read aloud. Her voice shook. What does that mean? It means Kai Maddox thinks you're connected to me, or that you could be used against me, which, as of last night, became true. Silas's expression didn't change, but his voice hardened. You pulled me into that party, Ms. Ellis. You touched me. You made yourself visible. And now, whether you understand it or not, you're a target. Rowan stood, shaking her head. That's insane. I don't even know you. I don't know this Maddox person. This has nothing to do with me. The truth was worse than that. It had everything to do with her, and the reason why was buried in her family's past. It has everything to do with you now. Silas stepped closer, his voice dropping. Kai Maddox is my rival. He controls half the underground operations on the West Coast. If he thinks you matter to me, he'll use you. He'll hurt you to get to me, and I won't allow that. You won't allow it? Rowan's voice rose. You don't get to decide what happens to me. I just did. Silas pulled out his phone and sent a text. Reed is moving you to a secure floor. You'll stay there under protection until I've neutralized the threat. This isn't a negotiation. You can't keep me prisoner. I'm keeping you alive. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something other than control. She saw responsibility. Wait. You walked into my world, Ms. Ellis. I'm making sure you walk out of it intact. Reed appeared in the doorway. Silas nodded once. Reed stepped forward, his expression apologetic but firm. Rowan wanted to scream. She wanted to run. But the photo on Silas's phone burned in her mind. Someone had been watching her. Someone dangerous. How long? She asked quietly. Until it's safe, Silas said. However long that takes. What neither of them knew was that safe would never come. Not while Kai Maddox was still breathing. Reed escorted her out. Silas stayed at the window, watching the strip below, and wondered how one impulsive woman had just upended everything he'd built. The secure floor was a gilded cage. The suite was enormous, luxurious, and suffocating. Rowan spent the first hour pacing, testing the door, and confirming what she already knew. She was locked in. The windows didn't open. The balcony door required a keycard she didn't have. Even the minibar was stocked like she was expected to stay for weeks. She tried the door again, yanking the handle hard. It didn't budge. I wouldn't recommend that, Ms. Ellis. Rowan spun. Reed stood in the hallway, arms crossed, expression neutral. She hadn't even heard him approach. Let me out, she demanded. I can't do that. This is illegal. You can't just hold me here. Mr. Sterling is protecting you. If you'd prefer to take your chances with Kai Maddox, I'm happy to arrange that instead. His voice stayed polite, but the underlying message was clear. She wasn't leaving. But Reed's confidence was about to be tested. Because Kai Maddox's reach extended further than anyone in that building realized. Rowan turned back to the window, her chest tight with frustration. The city sprawled below, glittering and indifferent. She pressed her forehead against the glass, trying to think of a way out. That's when she saw it. Movement on the rooftop across the street. A figure, dark against the fading daylight, holding something. Binoculars, maybe. Or a camera. Watching. Her breath caught. The figure didn't move. Just stood there, focused on her window. The door behind her opened. She turned, sharply. Silas walked in, Reed behind him. Silas's gaze flicked to the window, then back to her face. He saw it immediately. "Reed," Silas said quietly. Reed was already on his phone, speaking in clipped, urgent tones. Silas crossed the room and stood beside Rowan, looking out at the rooftop. The figure was gone. "That was real," Rowan whispered. "Someone was watching me." "I know." Silas's voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "That's why you're not leaving this building." What Silas didn't say was that the watcher had already transmitted Rowan's exact location, and Maddox's team was mobilizing. For how long? Not long. He turned to face her. "We're leaving Vegas. Tonight. My primary residence is in New York. It's more secure. Kai Maddox operates primarily on the West Coast, but he has reach. We need distance and better infrastructure." Rowan stared at him. "You want me to fly to New York with you?" "I want you alive, Ms. Ellis. That requires you to trust me." His eyes held hers. "I know you don't. But the alternative is letting Maddox take you, and I promise you don't want to see what happens then." Reed stepped forward. "Sir, the jet is ready. We should move now." Silas nodded. He looked at Rowan one more time. "Pack light. We leave in 20 minutes. Then he was gone, leaving Rowan alone with the knowledge that her life had just been ripped out of her hands by a man she'd mistaken for a stripper less than 24 hours ago. But the flight to New York would prove that distance meant nothing. Not when your enemy had already infiltrated everything. The private jet was sleek, quiet, and felt like a prison with wings. Rowan sat in a leather seat near the window, staring out at the dark sky. Silas sat across from her, reviewing something on his tablet. Reed sat near the front, speaking quietly into his phone. Rowan couldn't take the silence anymore. "This is your fault." Silas looked up. "Excuse me?" "This, all of this. You said it yourself. Maddox thinks I matter to you. But I don't. I'm just some random woman who made a stupid mistake at a bachelorette party. If you'd just ignored me, none of this would be happening." The truth in her words cut deeper than she knew. And Silas was about to tell her something that would change everything. Silas set down his tablet. "If I'd ignored you, Kai Maddox would have taken you within 48 hours. The surveillance started 3 weeks ago, Ms. Ellis. Long before you touched me. He already knew who you were. He was already planning something." "Then why me?" Her voice cracked. "I'm nobody. I don't know you. I don't know him. Why would he care about me?" Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "I don't know yet, but I will. And until I do, you're under my protection. That's not a punishment, Ms. Ellis. It's the only reason you're still breathing." Rowan looked away, her throat tight. She wanted to be angry, but the fear was bigger. The figure on the rooftop. The photo. The label. A good weakness. "I'm sorry," Silas said quietly. She looked at him, surprised. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had. Guilt, maybe. Or responsibility so heavy it looked like guilt. "This is my world," he continued. "It's ugly and dangerous, and you didn't ask to be part of it. But you are now. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, even if you hate me for it." What Silas didn't tell her was that, whatever it takes, included things he'd sworn he'd never do again. Dark things. Violent things. Rowan didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, and they flew through the night in silence. They landed in Manhattan just after midnight. A convoy of black SUVs waited on the tarmac. Reed moved with military precision, checking every vehicle before allowing Silas and Rowan to enter. The drive into the city was fast and tense. Rowan watched the lights blur past, feeling like she was in someone else's nightmare. The building was a sleek high-rise in Tribeca. They rode a private elevator to the penthouse. The doors opened to a space that was somehow even more intimidating than the Vegas suite. Modern, minimalist, and expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Everything was sharp lines and cold control. "Wow," Rowan said quietly. "You really commit to the whole intimidating billionaire aesthetic, don't you?" A voice answered from the kitchen. "He's been like this since he was 15. Don't take it personally." But the warmth of that voice was about to be shattered by an explosion that would prove nowhere was safe. Rowan turned. A young woman, maybe 24, stood by the counter holding a mug of tea. She had Silas's sharp features but warmer eyes. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore flannel pajamas like this was a normal Tuesday night. "Lila," Silas said, his voice tight, "you should be asleep. And you should have called ahead." Lila walked over, smiling at Rowan. "Hi, I'm Lila Sterling, Silas's much cooler younger sister. You must be Rowan, the woman who broke the internet by stripping my brother at a bachelorette party." Rowan's face went hot. "Oh God, is that online?" "Everywhere." Lila grinned. "Don't worry, Silas had it scrubbed within an hour. But I saved screenshots for blackmail purposes." "Lila," Silas warned. "Relax. I'm just making her feel welcome, which is more than you're doing." Lila turned back to Rowan. "Look, my brother is obsessively protective. It's annoying but well-intentioned. If he's brought you here, it's because he's genuinely worried about your safety. Try not to hold his terrible communication skills against him." Rowan blinked. "You're surprisingly normal." "One of us had to be." Lila squeezed her shoulder. "Get some rest. I'll make breakfast in the morning and tell you embarrassing stories about Silas. It'll be fun." She disappeared down the hallway, leaving Rowan and Silas alone. "Your sister is—" What happened next would prove that Kai Maddox didn't just follow them across the country. He'd already been waiting in New York. The explosion cut her off. The entire building shook. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed. Silas grabbed Rowan and pulled her to the floor, covering her body with his. Reed shouted something from across the room. Smoke alarms wailed. Then, silence. Silas lifted his head slowly, his body still pressed against Rowan's. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. Reed was already on his phone. "Car bomb, ground level, no structural damage, no casualties." He looked at Silas. "It was a message, sir." Silas helped Rowan to her feet. His hands lingered on her arms, steadying her. "He followed us," Rowan whispered. "Maddox followed us across the country." "Yes." Silas's voice was grim. "He did." Lila ran back into the room, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" "Get to the safe room," Silas ordered. "Now." "Silas." "Now, Lila." She hesitated, then grabbed Rowan's hand. "Come on." But Rowan's next decision would change everything. Because sometimes, choosing to stay is more powerful than running. But Rowan didn't move. She looked at Silas, and for the first time she saw the full weight he carried. The danger, the responsibility, the constant threat. "This is your life," she said quietly. "Yes." His eyes met hers. "And now it's yours." The building was swept by security for the next 3 hours. Reed coordinated teams on every floor. Lila stayed in the safe room. Silas stayed with Rowan in the penthouse living room, refusing to leave her side. She sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, watching him move through the space. He'd shed his jacket. His shirt was untucked, sleeves rolled up. She could see faint scars on his forearms. Old wounds. "How long have you lived like this?" she asked quietly. He stopped, looking at her. "A long time." "And you never get tired of it?" What Silas said next would reveal the cage he'd built for himself, and why Rowan might be the only person who could help him escape it. Every day. He crossed the room and sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough. "But this is the only world I know. I inherited it when I was 16. My father built an empire, and I was expected to maintain it. I didn't get a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not people like me." He leaned back, exhaustion finally showing. "If I walk away, someone worse takes over. If I show weakness, I lose everything. Control is the only thing that keeps me, and the people I care about, safe." Rowan looked at him, really looked. The sharp jaw, the cold eyes, the scars. He wasn't a villain. He was a man trapped in a cage he'd built himself. "You care about your sister," she said softly. "I'd burn the world for her." He said it like a simple fact. "And me?" The question surprised them both, but Silas's answer would seal both their fates, because once he said the words, there was no going back. Silas turned, his eyes locking with hers. "You were supposed to be a mistake I corrected, a liability I managed, but you're not." His voice dropped. "You're the first person who's touched me without fear in years. The first person who looked at me and saw just a man. I don't know what that means yet, but it means something." Rowan's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. She should pull away. She should remind herself that this man was a criminal, a control freak. Someone who'd locked her up for her own good, but she didn't. She leaned in. So did he. Their lips met slowly, carefully, like they were both testing the same dangerous idea. Then the kiss deepened. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was heat and hunger and something neither of them wanted to name. When they finally broke apart, Silas rested his forehead against hers. His breathing was uneven. "This is a terrible idea." "I know," Rowan whispered, "but I'm still here." "Yes," he said quietly. "You are." And for the first time since the elevator doors had opened in Vegas, Rowan felt like maybe she was exactly where she needed to be. But morning would bring a betrayal that would shatter everything they'd just built. And the evidence would point directly at Rowan. The next morning, everything changed. Rowan woke up in the guest room, her lips still tingling from the kiss. She could hear voices in the living room, Silas and Reed, talking in low, urgent tones. She pulled on yesterday's clothes and walked out. Silas's back was to her. Reed saw her first, his expression tightening. Silas turned, and the warmth from last night was gone. His face was a mask again. Cold. Distant. "What's going on?" Rowan asked. Reed held up a tablet. "We found the breach, the leak that told Maddox where to find us." Rowan's stomach dropped. "What breach?" The answer would tear them apart. And it would take a kidnapping to bring them back together. Silas stepped forward, his voice flat. "Your phone, Ms. Ellis. The secure communications device Reed gave you yesterday. It pinged our New York location to an external server at 3 a.m. last night." "What? That's impossible. I didn't even use it." "The data doesn't lie." Silas's eyes were hard. Someone used your phone to leak our location to Kai Maddox. Either you did it, or someone got access to your device. Either way, you're the breach. Rowan felt like she'd been slapped. You think I'm working with him? I don't know what to think. His voice stayed calm, but the doubt was there, cold and sharp. I've spent my entire life trusting no one. Last night I let my guard down, and this morning, I find out that the woman I kissed is the reason Maddox knew exactly where to strike. Silas, I didn't... Save it. He turned away. Reed, keep her confined to this floor. No phone, no unsupervised movement. We'll figure out the truth, but until then, she's a liability. Rowan's eyes burned. So that's it? One piece of data and you just assume I'm the enemy? He didn't turn around. I assume everyone is the enemy until they prove otherwise. You should have known that. Reed gestured toward the hallway. Rowan wanted to scream, to fight, to make him understand. But she saw it in his posture. The walls were back up. The man who'd kissed her last night was gone. Only the billionaire crime boss remained. She walked to her room and slammed the door. But what Silas couldn't see was that his distrust was exactly what Kai Maddox had been counting on. The real plan was already in motion. In the living room, Silas stood at the window, his jaw tight. Lila appeared beside him, arms crossed. You're an idiot, she said flatly. She's a security risk. She's a woman who had her life turned upside down by you, and now you're punishing her for something she probably didn't even do. Lila shook her head. You're terrified, Silas. Not of Maddox. Of her. Because she makes you feel something you can't control. Silas didn't answer. Because his sister was right. 3 days passed in cold silence. Silas avoided Rowan. Rowan avoided everyone. Reed worked around the clock to trace the breach. Lila tried to bridge the gap, but even she couldn't fix the fracture. On the 4th morning, Silas called a meeting. We're moving you to a secure compound outside the city. Maddox knows this location. We need somewhere off-grid. Rowan looked at him with hollow eyes. Fine. He hated how empty she sounded, like she'd given up. But the convoy would never reach the compound. Because Kai Maddox had been waiting for this exact moment. The convoy left at noon. 3 SUVs, heavily armed security, and Reed driving the lead vehicle. Silas sat beside Rowan in the middle car. They didn't speak. They were 20 minutes outside the city when the first gunshot shattered the windshield. The driver swerved. Reed's voice screamed over the comms. Ambush! We're pinned! Bullets tore through the vehicle. Silas grabbed Rowan and pulled her down. The SUV spun, tires screeching. More gunfire, shouting, chaos. The door beside Rowan was ripped open. Hands grabbed her, yanking her out. She screamed. Silas lunged for her, but someone slammed the car door into his face. Blood sprayed. Rowan! His voice was raw, desperate. In that moment, Silas Sterling, the man who never lost control, realized he'd just lost the only thing that mattered. She saw Reed hit the ground, blood spreading from his shoulder. She saw Silas's face, twisted in anguish and rage. Then a cloth pressed over her mouth. Chemical sweetness. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Silas fighting, clawing, screaming her name. Then darkness. Rowan woke up in a concrete room. Her head pounded. Her wrists were zip-tied. A man sat across from her in a metal chair, smiling like they were old friends. Hello, Rowan, Kai Maddox said. We need to talk about your family. He was younger than she expected. Handsome, even, but his eyes were dead. What family? Rowan's voice was hoarse. What Kai revealed next would explain everything. The surveillance. the targeting. The debt that made Rowan a pawn before she ever met Silas Sterling. Your father, Michael Ellis. He borrowed money from my organization 10 years ago. A lot of money. He died before he could pay it back. Kai leaned forward. That debt transferred to you. Rowan's blood went cold. My father died in a car accident. Did he? Kai's smile widened. Or did he die because he tried to run from people like me? Either way, you're the collateral. And now, you're the leverage I need to destroy Silas Sterling. He doesn't care about me. He thinks I'm a traitor. Oh, he cares. Kai pulled out his phone, showing her surveillance footage of the ambush. Silas's face, contorted in rage and fear, screaming her name. He cares more than he wants to, which makes you perfect. Rowan's throat tightened. What are you going to do? Use you to break him. Then kill you both. Kai stood. Don't worry, it'll be quick. But Kai Maddox had made one fatal mistake. He'd underestimated how far Silas Sterling would go for the woman he loved. Hours passed. Maybe days. Rowan lost track. She was moved twice, kept hooded and silent. Then, suddenly the sounds of gunfire echoed through the building. Shouting. Explosions. Chaos. The door to her cell burst open. Silas stood there, covered in blood, a gun in his hand. His eyes found hers, and something shattered in his expression. Rowan. She'd never heard her name sound like that. Like prayer. Like desperation. He cut her restraints and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have... Silas. Her voice cracked. He said my father. I know. Reed traced everything. Your father's debt. Maddox's plan. You were never the leak. It was a setup. His hands framed her face. I doubted you, and it almost got you killed. I will never forgive myself. But forgiveness would have to wait, because Kai Maddox was about to make his final move. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Kai Maddox appeared, gun raised. Silas shoved Rowan behind him. This ends now. Kai smiled. Finally. Something honest. They collided. The fight was brutal. Fists, blood, rage. No elegance, no strategy. Just two men who hated each other, destroying everything in their path. Kai was fast. Silas was relentless. Rowan watched, frozen, as they tore each other apart. Kai landed a punch that sent Silas crashing into the wall. Silas retaliated with a kick that shattered Kai's knee. They grappled, both bleeding, both refusing to stop. It ended when Silas slammed Kai against the concrete wall, gun pressed to his temple. Walk away, Silas said, his voice shaking. Leave the country. Disappear. If I ever see you again, I'll kill you. And if you ever speak her name, I'll burn everything you love before I put a bullet in your head. Kai spat blood. You think you've won? No. Silas's voice was cold. But I protected what matters. And in that moment, Silas Sterling made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He chose mercy over vengeance. He chose Rowan over revenge. He pulled Rowan out of the building. Reed was waiting, alive but bandaged. The extraction was clean. Fast. Professional. In the SUV, Rowan finally broke. Sobs tore through her. Silas pulled her against his chest, his hand in her hair. Whispering apologies and promises she couldn't hear over her own crying. I love you, he said quietly. I didn't want to. I tried not to. But I love you, Rowan. And I almost lost you because I was too afraid to admit it. She looked up at him, tears streaming. You really think I'd betray you? No, I think I've spent so long not trusting anyone that I forgot how. But I'm learning. He kissed her forehead. Teach me. Stay with me. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it. You really are obsessively protective, she whispered. Lila warned you. His voice cracked into something like a laugh. I'm terrible at this, but I'm yours. If you'll have me. Rowan kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything they'd almost lost. I'm yours, she whispered. But you have to trust me. Really trust me. I will, he promised. I do. And for the first time, she believed him. But the aftermath of war is never clean. And what came next would test whether their love could survive in the real world. The safe house Reed took them to was nothing like Silas's penthouse. It was a cabin in upstate New York, surrounded by dense woods and protected by a security system that would make the Pentagon jealous. But it felt like home in a way the penthouse never had. Rowan spent the first 2 days sleeping. Her body needed to recover from the trauma, from the drugs Maddox had used, from the sheer terror of not knowing if she'd live or die. Silas stayed close, never more than a room away, checking on her every hour. On the 3rd day, she woke to find him sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the forest. He looked exhausted, haunted. How long have you been sitting there? She asked. He turned. A while. Did you sleep? Some. But what Silas wasn't telling her was that he'd spent the last 3 nights hunting down every remaining member of Kai Maddox's organization, making sure the threat was truly eliminated. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Talk to me. About what? About what's going through your head. About why you look like you're carrying the weight of the world. Silas was quiet for a long time. Then, I keep replaying the ambush. The moment they took you. I've been in dangerous situations my entire life, Rowan. I've been shot at, stabbed, nearly killed more times than I can count. But nothing has ever felt like watching them rip you out of that car. His voice broke slightly. I thought I'd lost you. And the worst part was knowing it was my fault. I pushed you away. I doubted you. I made you vulnerable because I was too afraid to admit what you meant to me. Rowan stood and crossed to him. She knelt in front of his chair, taking his hands in hers. You came for me. I would have torn the world apart to find you. I know. She squeezed his hands. And that's what matters. Not your fear, not your doubts. You came for me, Silas. That's the man I choose to see. But choosing to see the good in him wouldn't erase the darkness, and Rowan was about to learn that loving Silas Sterling meant accepting all of him, even the parts that scared her. He pulled her up onto his lap, holding her close. Reed found the truth about your father's debt. Do you want to know? Rowan stiffened. I'm not sure. Your father borrowed $2 million from Maddox's organization 12 years ago. He was trying to start a business, something legitimate, but it failed. He couldn't pay back the loan, and he knew what that meant. Silas's voice was gentle. He tried to negotiate. He tried to make payments. But Maddox's father, Kai's father, didn't accept negotiations. Your father ran. And they killed him. Rowan's voice was flat. The car accident was no accident. They ran him off the road. Silas paused. But here's the thing. In that world, the debt should have died with him. Kai's father never pursued family members for inherited debt. It wasn't worth it. The collateral was always the borrower's life, not their children's. Rowan looked at him. Then why me? The answer revealed just how calculated Kai Maddox had been, and how Rowan had been a pawn in a game she never knew existed. Because Kai Maddox saw an opportunity. He'd been watching me for years, looking for weaknesses. When he discovered your father's old debt in his organization's records, he started surveilling you. Not because of the debt, that was just an excuse, but because he saw you as a potential weapon against me. But we'd never met. How could he know I'd ever cross your path? He didn't. Silas's jaw tightened. He was going to manufacture it. Reed found evidence that Maddox had people positioned near you for months. They were going to stage a meeting, make it look natural. Maybe at your work, or a coffee shop, or through mutual contacts. But you beat him to it. You walked into my hotel, pulled me into that bachelorette party, and created the connection he was trying to manufacture. Rowan's stomach turned. So it's all just chance? Wrong place? Wrong time? No. Silas lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. It's fate. Because if you hadn't walked into that suite, Maddox would have eventually forced our paths to cross anyway. But it would have been on his terms, on his timeline, with you completely unaware of the danger. At least this way, we had a chance to fight back. That's a terrifying way to think about fate. Welcome to my world. They sat in silence for a while, Rowan processing everything, Silas holding her like he was afraid she might disappear. Finally, Rowan asked, "What happens now?" The answer would determine everything, because Silas was about to offer her a choice: stay in his world, or walk away forever. "Now you decide," Silas said quietly. Reed confirmed that Kai Maddox left the country. His organization is fractured. The immediate threat is gone. You're safe to return to your life if you want. I'll make sure you have protection for as long as you need it, but you're free to go. Rowan pulled back to look at him. "You're giving me a choice? I took it away from you once. I won't make that mistake again." His eyes were steady, but she could see the fear beneath. "I want you to stay. God, I want that more than I've wanted anything in my life. But I won't trap you. I won't use fear or protection or duty to keep you here. If you stay, it has to be because you choose me, not because you're afraid of what's out there." "And if I leave?" His jaw tightened. "Then I let you go. And I spend the rest of my life making sure you stay safe. Even if I'm not the one protecting you." This was the moment that would define them. Stay or go. Love or fear. Choice or safety. Rowan stood, pacing to the window. The forest stretched endlessly, peaceful and isolated. She thought about her apartment in Silver Lake, her job, her friends, the life she'd had before Silas Sterling. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like it belonged to someone else. She thought about Peyton's wedding, which she'd missed, about the worried texts from her friends that Reed had shown her, about the normalcy she'd lost. But she also thought about Silas's hands framing her face, about his voice breaking when he said, "I love you," about the way he'd fought through hell to save her, about Lila's warmth and Reed's quiet loyalty, and the strange, violent, protective world Silas had built. "If I stay," she said slowly, not turning around. "What does that look like?" Honest answer? Always. What Silas offered next wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, dangerous, and more honest than any promise he'd ever made. It looks like security details, background checks on anyone who gets close to you, bulletproof cars and safe rooms and contingency plans for threats you'll never see coming. His voice was steady but raw. "It looks like me waking up in the middle of the night to make sure you're still breathing. It looks like Lila becoming your sister and Reed becoming your shadow. It looks like a life that's never completely safe, never completely normal." He stood and crossed to her, but didn't touch her. "But it also looks like this. You'll never doubt that you're loved. You'll never doubt that you're protected, You'll have resources to do anything you want. Start a business, pursue a passion, change careers. You'll have a family that would burn the world for you. And you'll have me, every day, trying to be worthy of the choice you made. Rowan turned. And you'll trust me? Really trust me? No more walls, no more assuming I'm the enemy when things go wrong? I'll try. Every day I'll try. His voice dropped. I can't promise I'll be perfect at it. I've spent 15 years building walls, but I'll tear them down for you. Brick by brick, if that's what it takes. She searched his face. And if I want to keep my job, my apartment, my independence, then you keep them. I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Rowan. I'm asking you to be who you are, with me. In the end, the choice was simpler than she expected. Because love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about choosing the right person, even in impossible situations. Okay, she said quietly. Silas blinked. Okay? I'm staying. I choose you. She stepped closer. I'm terrified. I'm still processing everything. And I'm probably going to need therapy for the rest of my life. But I'm staying. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. You're sure? No, she smiled. But I'm choosing you anyway. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of relief. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For seeing me. Not the criminal, not the billionaire, not the man everyone fears, just me. That's the only version I've ever seen, Rowan said. Everything else is just noise. 2 weeks later, Rowan stood in Silas's penthouse, their penthouse now, staring out at the city. She was healed, mostly. The bruises had faded. The nightmares were less frequent. Kai Maddox had disappeared, his organization dismantled. Silas had made good on his promise. She heard footsteps behind her. Silas wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. I have something for you, he said quietly. She turned. He held a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Silas. And here, in this moment, Silas Sterling did something he'd never done before. He offered vulnerability. He offered forever. I bought this 3 days before the ambush, he said, opening it. A ring gleamed inside. Simple, elegant, perfect. I knew then. I was just too afraid to say it. Rowan's eyes filled with tears. You're proposing? Yes. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. I know my world is dangerous. I know I'm difficult and controlling and terrible at expressing emotion. But I love you. And I want you beside me, not behind me. As my partner. My equal. If you'll take the risk. Rowan looked at the ring, then at him. I have a condition. Anything. I am never a weakness, she said firmly. I am your equal. In everything. Or this doesn't work. Silas smiled. The real smile. The one she'd only seen a handful of times. Only mine, he said softly. Always my strength. She kissed him, and he slid the ring onto her finger. Lila appeared in the doorway, grinning. Finally! I thought you'd never ask. How long have you been listening? Silas asked. The whole time. I live here, remember? She hugged Rowan. Welcome to the family. Try to keep him human for me. Rowan laughed. And for the first time since the elevator doors had opened in Vegas, she felt like she'd found exactly where she belonged. Not because someone had forced her, not because she was running from something, but because she'd chosen it. She'd chosen him, and she was defining her own future on her own terms. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is open your heart. And sometimes that's exactly what saves you. 6 months later, the wedding was small, intimate, just family and the handful of people Silas and Rowan trusted completely. Reed stood as Silas's best man, still carrying a slight limp from the ambush, but alive and fiercely loyal. Lila was Rowan's maid of honor, crying through her entire speech about how Rowan had made her brother human again. Peyton was there, of course. She'd forgiven Rowan for missing her bachelorette party and her wedding, especially after Rowan had explained what actually happened. "You got kidnapped by the Mafia and still came back for the man," Peyton had said, laughing through tears. "That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Also the most terrifying. But mostly romantic." The ceremony was held in the same cabin where Rowan had made her choice, where she'd decided that love was worth the risk, where she'd looked at Silas Sterling, criminal, billionaire, protector, and seen just a man who loved her. When Silas said his vows, his voice was steady. "You walked into my life by accident. You stayed by choice. You saved me when I didn't know I needed saving. I promise to trust you, to protect you, to love you, every day for the rest of my life." When Rowan said hers, she smiled. "You scare me. Your world scares me, but losing you scares me more. I promise to be your equal, your partner, your strength, and to never, ever mistake you for a stripper again." The guests laughed. Silas's eyes crinkled with genuine joy. And in that moment, Rowan realized something. The most dangerous thing about Silas Sterling wasn't his power or his world or his enemies. It was how completely he loved, how fiercely he protected, how devastatingly human he became when he let his walls down. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small gathering erupted in applause. Later, at the reception, Reed pulled Rowan aside. "I need to tell you something." Her stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I just wanted you to know." He hesitated. "I've worked for Silas for 8 years. I've seen him make impossible decisions. I've seen him ruthless and cold and completely detached. But I've never seen him happy. Not until you." Rowan's throat tightened. "Reed." "You saved him, Rowan. Not from Maddox. From himself." Reed's expression softened. "Thank you. For giving him a reason to be more than what his world made him." He walked away before she could respond. Silas found her a moment later. "What did Reed say?" "That I make you happy." "He's right." Silas pulled her close. "You make me everything I thought I couldn't be." They danced, surrounded by the people who'd fought for them, protected them, loved them. And Rowan realized that this was her life now. Complicated, dangerous, unconventional. But hers. Because in the end, love isn't about perfect circumstances or safe choices. It's about finding someone worth fighting for, someone worth the risk, someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway. As the night wore on and the music played, Lila pulled Rowan onto the makeshift dance floor. "So," Lila said, grinning, "how does it feel to be married to the scariest man in New York?" Rowan laughed. "Terrifying, exhilarating. Right. That's the Sterling effect." Lila spun her. "We make everything complicated. But we love completely. Welcome to the chaos, sister." And as Rowan looked across the room at Silas, her husband, her partner, her choice, she smiled. Because this was her story, and she'd chosen to write it on her own terms, even if it started with her mistaking a mafia boss for a stripper. And that's the thing about dangerous love. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't promise safety. It just happens. And when it does, you have 2 choices: run from it or run toward it. Rowan chose to run toward it. And in doing so, she found something she never expected. A man who would burn the world to keep her safe. A family who would fight beside her. And a love that was worth every risk. Because in Silas Sterling's world, there are no safe bets. There are only choices. And Rowan Ellis chose him. If you made it this far, thank you. This story is about more than a mafia romance. It's about the toxic cycle of distrust, the burden of inherited trauma, and the courage it takes to choose vulnerability in a world that punishes it. Silas was born into a system that taught him trust is weakness. Rowan was marked by a debt she never knew existed. Together, they broke the cycle. That's the villain in this story. A world where fear rules everything, where debt transfers like sin, where love is weaponized. But they chose differently, and that's what makes their story worth telling. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Comment where you're watching from. I love knowing this story found you. And share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing love, even dangerous love, can be the bravest thing you ever do. Thanks for being here.